Hi, and welcome to the Changing Perspectives podcast, the show where we discuss a variety of topics including grief, parenting, health and wellness, and relationships. Join us and explore a number of changing perspectives. We're your hosts, Jenni and Josh Brennan. Hi, Jenni.
Hi.
What's happening?
Nothing. Busy. Lots of stuff. But
So this is episode 29, comes out on
the 27th.
Thursday, the 27th, right? So happy Thursday, everybody. We're recording this on a Saturday, and it's a beautiful Saturday here in Southern Massachusetts.
And we are inside.
We are inside in the studio. But it's nice and chill in here. We have the lighting, and Everett's next to you.
And we're doing it today because we are outside all day tomorrow for baseball.
We are.
Except for the 6 hours we spend in the car driving. But
it will be nice tomorrow too, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And we get to stop at my favorite tacos restaurant ever on the way home. So
yes,
it's okay.
If anybody's ever in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, check out Barrios.
Oh my God, it's so
tacos.
Good.
It's so good.
I want to live there.
It's legit. It's legit tacos. All right, everybody, don't forget to like us, review us, and follow us. Check out all of our great previous episodes. We just released one the other day on parenting with hope when things seem hopeless. That was a fun episode. Stay tuned. We have lots of great stuff planned over the coming weeks.
It was a fun episode?
It was a fun episode.
How was it fun?
It's fun to get good information, right?
I would say useful.
Okay, that's helpful episode, resourceful episode. I enjoy doing this podcast with you, so it's always fun.
Okay.
Regardless of the topic. But yeah, I guess that was an ill-placed adjective. Again, stay tuned. We have lots of great stuff planned. The episode that I teased for Pop Culture Cosmos was just released this past Friday, so check that out on Pop Culture Cosmos. I was talking to my buddy Gerald about Game of Thrones, and that was released on all the platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and all that stuff. Lots of great stuff coming up, like we said. And questions, listener questions. Please submit your thoughts and questions and ideas and comments to our Instagram page, Facebook page. We would love to continue the conversation about changing perspectives on the social media world. So get out and do that. Jenni is feverishly writing something. Go ahead and say it.
No.
Why?
Because I wrote it so I didn't have to say it.
Well,
I'm passing notes in class.
You're passing notes.
Don't be that teacher.
Listen, if you would like to share with the rest of the class what you wrote.
I would not. If I wanted you to know, I would tell you.
Well, now everybody's going to
Our kids always get mad when I say that.
I know, right?
When they're like, what are you talking about? I say, if I wanted you to know, I would tell you.
Are you excited about our weekend plans for today? Our Saturday plans?
I am. Yep. We're going to play with puppies.
Yes.
We're going to apparently have a date night. I don't know if that's going to happen.
What do you mean apparently?
I don't know. We'll see.
Okay.
Okay.
Now I'm nervous.
Well, I don't know. I just feel like you're not going to want to go.
Wasn't that the plan?
You're gonna. We might come home with a fourth puppy. I don't really know.
No,
if that happens, we're getting a divorce.
A little charity event we're going to at our friend's brewery. We're gonna have some beer and play with puppies. It's gonna be fun, and we're gonna go out on a date.
Okay.
After that, so exciting.
To the restaurant we always go to because we are boring.
Not boring. We just know what we like. We've been together for over 20.
Well, and truthfully, there's not a lot
years.
of like nice, but not super fancy.
Yeah, we
restaurants that are close to us.
Like preferred type of venue.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think this is the closest one. The other ones are like at least 25, 30 minutes away.
Yeah.
It's a little too far because we're old and boring. So
this is our third episode. We are recording with a new setup and microphones and new stands and everything and audio. And I think the first one that came out on Thursday was excellent. I do want to say so. Now who's breathing into the mic?
I was yawning.
We caught you in a yawn.
Yeah.
So anyway, are you liking the new setup, Jenni?
Yep.
Even though you can't hold a mic?
No, I like not having to hold the mic.
Oh, good. Mm-hmm. The other day you needed like a fidget spinner or something. You're doing okay with it?
That's probably why I was using my phone during the last episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. All right, Jenni. What are we talking about today?
You have no idea.
I really don't, actually.
So we have this like list of sort of planned topics, and like 5 minutes before we started recording this episode, I said, I want to change the topic because this morning as I was doing some course prep, lesson planning for my classes for this week, God bless you, Josh sneezed. Did you mute yourself? Sorry.
I did mute myself. Thank you for the polite gesture, though.
I lost my train of thought. Oh, as I was doing lesson planning this morning, I was listening to stuff, and you said, "What are you listening to?" And I told you. I said,
"Really?
Yeah, that's your voice."
Okay.
And I said, "Oh, it's CBT this week." And you said, "What's CBT?" And I realized,
I just thought of CBD.
Oh, like the oil?
Cannabis. Yeah.
So I realized that this is a very, very popular, very effective treatment tool in the therapy world that's been around actually for quite some time, although it's kind of a newer treatment model. And really, you don't necessarily need a therapist to do it with you. And so
That's interesting.
I think people could probably benefit from sort of hearing about some of the core concepts about it, because you could kind of therapize yourself in a way. Like, this is a kind of therapy where you could actually like buy a workbook. I can tell you which workbook to get from sort of one of the big sort of prominent figures in the field. And a lot of actually research on that particular workbook shows that people who are on like a wait list for therapy, while they are on the wait list for therapy, if they read this book and do the workbook activities, they actually, like, over 60% of them find that they no longer need actual therapy. So it doesn't like cure everything, but I think it definitely gives some useful tools that everybody could probably apply at some point. And I realized as I was sort of thinking about it this morning that this is kind of, even though I don't think that I'm primarily a CBT focused therapist. I do bring in a lot of CBT concepts. And I think that they're really useful. So I wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit and how you could apply some of those concepts to your life, particularly if it's around anxiety, or you're stuck, or you're depressed, or something like that.
Okay.
So that's what we're talking about today. Do you know anything about CBT? Have you heard about it at all?
No.
Cognitive behavioral therapy.
I've heard the term. I just don't know
So if you had to guess, what would you think it is? Cognitive behavioral therapy.
I would think that it has something to do with thought processes and how they relate to behavioral changes.
Yes.
Or something like that.
You got it. Episode is done.
Okay.
See you next week when it is July. No, it's it.
I am learning along with everybody else. I have literally no notes. You sent me some screenshots of stuff, but I don't have any.
You know nothing. Yeah, this is kind of good. So it was actually, so you're right. It's cognitive behavioral therapy. It is connected to, it's about connecting sort of our cognitions, our thought processes with our behaviors. Also, and I don't know why this is not in the name, but it's also our emotions. So it's sort of, if you picture like a triangle, it's a triangle between our thoughts. And when we're talking about cognitive behavioral therapy, we're talking about them in terms of automatic thoughts. And I'll talk about automatic thoughts in a minute. So our automatic thoughts, which then sort of trigger feelings for us. And then our feelings trigger our behaviors. And then our behaviors then in turn trigger more thoughts. And so it becomes this sort of cycle. And it can kind of work the other way too. So this sort of triangular relationship between our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors.
Okay.
And so the thought process is that if someone is stuck, if they're stuck with like motivation, if they're stuck with anxiety, if they're stuck with depression, really if they're stuck with anything, one sort of intervention method is to break whatever cycle they have going on. And so you can break that cycle at the point of automatic thoughts, the point of feelings, or the point of behaviors. And so some of what the very first things I tell people that come to see me when they're talking about anxiety, they're talking about being stuck, talking about motivation issues and depression, is for them to really start to pay attention to their thoughts, because we so often don't think about our thoughts. We just have our thoughts. Like if you are, the example that was sort of used in the video I was watching this morning, imagine you are awakened tonight. There's a loud crash and it sounds like someone's breaking into your house. What do you feel?
Super nervous.
Okay, so you're feeling scared.
Yeah.
So what might you do? Because you hear the sound, you're thinking, crap, someone's breaking in. You feel scared, you feel nervous. What do you do?
What do I physically, like what do I actually do?
What are your actions?
Grab my bat that's next to my bed.
That's true. Stay out of our house because we will get you with a baseball bat.
It's actually a gigantic softball bat.
Oh, with our softball bat.
Yeah.
Is that more dangerous than a baseball bat? Should you be having like a BB core bat? Should we?
No, it's heavier than
right,
Jackson's.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you would grab your bat. You'd be sort of prepared for a fight. Then what would you do?
I would tell you to stay put.
Okay.
And get my phone.
That's sweet.
Just in case I have to call 911 or something.
Okay.
And I'd exit the bedroom and make sure the boys' doors were shut and figure out what's going on.
All right. What if tonight you are awakened by a large sound and you're thinking, ugh, Pixie just knocked over something? What do you feel?
Annoyed.
What do you do?
Nothing. Yeah.
Do you see how your feeling was based on your thought?
Yes.
Okay. So, and then your behaviors kind of came out of that thought process.
Right.
So you see that connection between the thought, then that triggers your feeling, that triggers your behavior.
Right.
So we have automatic thoughts all the time. Like all day long, our brain is sort of firing these thoughts. We could even say like the thought about breathing, the signal our brain sends to our body to breathe, to pump blood, to sort of flow oxygen, to swallow when we're eating, all of those things. We're not really thinking about those. When we're driving down the street and we're passing Target, we're not all the time, most of the time, aware that like, oh, there's a Target. When we're coming up to a red light, when we come up to a red light, we're not like
you have
actively thinking.
Radar.
Mm-hmm. We're not actively thinking, ooh, red light. What am I supposed to do? I have to stop. It just becomes this automatic thought. So we can also have automatic thoughts kind of about ourselves. So another sort of core principle of cognitive behavioral therapy is that we have these automatic thoughts that then influence our feelings, then influence our behavior. But we also have these core beliefs about ourselves and about the world around us and about the people that we interact with. And sometimes those core thoughts, core beliefs can sort of set off automatic thoughts. So sometimes our core beliefs and our automatic thoughts can be faulty. So one of the first things I talk to people about when they come to see me and they're stuck is really kind of listening to their automatic thoughts. So I sort of liken it to like a radio dial. I want you to sort of turn up the dial on your thoughts, which feels weird, right? Like I'm basically telling people to listen to the voice in your head. Like really listen to it. And it's uncomfortable to do that at first, and it feels weird, and it takes attention, and it takes focus, and it's hard, and it definitely takes time. But I don't need you to stay there forever. I just need you to sort of turn up that volume temporarily, and let's see what those automatic thoughts are. So there's a lot of sort of prescribed homework with CBT, with cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay.
You will come to therapy, your therapist will give you homework assignments, which are oftentimes worksheets to fill out. Then you will go home, do the worksheets, bring them home, talk about what that process was like for you, and then sort of go over what your worksheet actually says. This is why I'm kind of sharing it today, because you can do that without really a therapist.
I see.
If you are motivated, you read the book, you have the worksheets, you can kind of hold yourself accountable, you can go ahead and do these worksheets on your own and still get a lot of the sort of benefits of cognitive behavioral therapy. So for people whose schedules don't really allow them to build in therapy, for people whose insurance makes it difficult for them to have therapy, for maybe people who are on a wait list for a therapist, or people who just aren't ready for therapy, this is a good place to start. It's worthwhile starting. You could even like get these books, these workbooks from the library and photocopy them or sort of write them down on your own. So you don't even have to have like a big financial investment in this. Looks like you have a question.
I do. Do you as a clinician start with this right away?
No, it depends on the person, really. I'm also pretty psychodynamic, so I'm also
Can you explain what that means?
Pretty heavily influenced by Freud. Remember, like the old crazy white guy you learned about? Did you ever take a psych class?
I did. Yeah.
Did you ever learn about Freud, like the id, the ego, the superego, the Oedipus complex, penis envy, all that stuff? Some of what Freud had proposed is pretty out there and pretty like old white guy stuff. However, I do tend to sort of gravitate towards a lot of that sort of conscious, subconscious stuff, that there are a lot of things that influence us that are really at our subconscious level, that sort of like automatic thoughts we're not really even aware of. And not that everything that kind of comes up in your adulthood can be blamed on your parents or your childhood, but I do think a lot of sort of what drives us can be sort of based on experiences that we have as children. And sometimes those things need to be sort of resolved and kind of brought into the present time. So I sort of blend some of that, but I also kind of start right where people are at with a very solutions focused approach. Like, what is the problem you are having? Why are you here today? What do you want to achieve? And then sort of filter in some of this other stuff, because some people will come to me and they don't want to do any homework. They have zero interest in worksheets or doing anything in between sessions. So I really base it on the individual themselves. But there are some people who will come and say, my doctor said I need a therapist, and they said I need a CBT. I don't know what CBT is, but my doctor said I need it. So then,
okay.
And sometimes I don't agree with the doctor.
Well,
actually, a lot of times I don't agree with the doctor.
Is that an general medicine person, like a PCP saying that? Yes,
because CBT has become very well known. There's a lot of research about it, and so I'm going to get on a tangent, because yesterday I was reading a neuropsych report for someone that I've been seeing for a while, and the neuropsychologist found this individual to be severely depressed and wants to put him on medication. I've been seeing this individual for like a year, and you know what? He's not depressed. He's grieving. And so this neuropsychologist really labeled grief in a pathological way and wants to put him on medication.
Interesting.
Like this, is he sad? For sure. But is he able to get out of bed? Yep. Is he able to bathe and shower? Yep. Is he able to hold down a job? Yep. Is he able to have relationships? Yep. Does he have joy with his children, his grandchildren, his friends? Yes. Does he ever forget or cancel our sessions? Nope. Does he show up on time and participate actively? Yes. Does he remember the things we talk about? Yes. So does he need medication?
Right.
No, he's great. Is he sad when the anniversary of his loved one's death comes around? Yes.
Yeah.
Is he lonely? Yes. But is he not motivated? No. So I'm having a little tender spot right now, because so sometimes in the medical community, medication is looked at as a band-aid. You're sad? Here's an antidepressant. Oh, someone died? Here's an anti-anxiety pill and an antidepressant. Oh, you're struggling? Go get CBT. Well intended, but look, that's not their specialty. It's my specialty, right? That's why you sort of get referred out. So to answer your question, do I use this with everybody? No. But it is a very highly effective form of therapy for a lot of people, and it can sort of be applied on your own at home.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Do you want to, yeah, absolutely. This is interesting. Do you want to shout out the book that you read?
Yeah,
is that the book you referenced?
So the sort of father of this is Aaron Beck, and he was a psychiatrist, and so he started doing some research, kind of feeling like medication and talk therapy doesn't seem to be doing so much. He was actually really heavily influenced by Freud and psychodynamic theory, but really was interested in that cognitive piece. And so he started kind of designing this sort of theory, and what I think is most useful for people, I mean, you certainly can read Aaron Beck's work, but what is particularly, I think, helpful for people is the book written by David Burns, and that's called Feeling Good. And there's lots of different iterations of that now, but it's Feeling Good by David Burns. It's called The New Mood Therapy. So Beck approached him.
$7.99 on Amazon.
Yeah. So Beck approached him.
There's an audiobook too.
There's an audiobook. There's also a workbook. So I would recommend that people get the book and the workbook. Beck, when he was doing his research, approached him because David Burns he was also a psychiatrist, and he was also feeling some of the same concern that, like, so many of my patients who are severely anxious, severely depressed are not really getting any better. I'm giving them all these meds. Some of them are being helped, but most of them really aren't. Like, nothing's really helping. And so he has a great TED Talk too. I'll share the TED Talk. So his colleague was like, hey, have you heard about this cognitive behavioral therapy? And David Burns was like, no. And he said, yeah, that sounds crazy. So he said, well, why don't you go to some of the like trainings that Dr. Beck is putting on and prove him wrong. So we started going to the trainings, started sort of bringing them, infusing them in his work with his patients, and he started to see that it was working. So he actually had been awarded a grant for something he was studying, and he decided to give back the grant so he could sort of focus all in on cognitive behavioral therapy. And it's really kind of changed his life and made it's been his life work.
That's interesting.
So Beck approached him and said, why don't you research this with me? Why don't you help me write this book about it? And he said, actually, I think where I'm better served, or, where folks will be better served by me, is if I actually write the components of this that the general public can appreciate. So Beck sort of took over the writing for clinicians and sort of the resources for clinicians, and Dr. Burns took over how do we make this accessible to people.
Yeah.
And so his book is the one I referenced that's actually been studied as being sort of so effective for people on a wait list for therapy that then they no longer need therapy.
That's interesting.
So yeah, very, very affordable. I'm sure your libraries have copies of it. So Dr. David Burns.
I think people are digesting books these days via audiobooks.
Well, that's true. I didn't look to see how much it is on Audible. I'm sure it's on Audible.
I don't think it's that much.
Maybe he even recorded it himself.
It is $27.99.
How much does an Audible book cost?
I don't know, because
I
just bought the book one of Game of Thrones, but it was like I had a free.
You have credits.
I have credits, yeah.
So but also, sure. you need the workbook. You need like the worksheet. Yeah. So I think maybe the Audible piece to hear kind of the primary components about it, sort of the lessons. But I think you need the workbook, even if you're photocopying them. Or listen, you could Google them and get a lot of the workbook tools too. I'm going to sort of share sort of some basic ones with you. Okay. So automatic thoughts. So how do you actually start to tune into your automatic thoughts? Well, one of the big sort of tools that's used in cognitive behavioral therapy is called a thought record or a thought log, where you actually journal and write down what you're thinking. So you start with a situation. So if you're driving, if you're listening to this, I would encourage you all right now to sort of think about something that's bothering you. So think about something you're nervous about, something that causes you anxiety, something that, maybe it's your depression, maybe it's something that is making you feel unmotivated, something that you feel stuck with. Do you have a thought? Do you have any? I'm putting you on the spot. Do you have anything that you want to sort of unpack and use as an example that feels safe for you to share on air?
I'm gonna need to think on that for a minute. I definitely want to share.
Okay, all right. So for people out there, think about it too, and you don't have to be sharing with us, although you could. But sort of think about, okay, what's something that's giving me stress right now? What is an area in my life that I feel like I want to make changes in, but I can't? Or what is something that I avoid?
Oh, all right.
Like I know for me, I get, well, it's probably easier for you to think of me. Can you think of a situation for me where I'm stuck or?
Oh, geez.
That, oh, geez, is like, there's so many. Let's talk about the one that all three of you always yell at me for.
What's that?
I have social anxiety.
Yes.
And I have a low self-esteem. Mm-hmm. So when we get invited places,
yes.
Tell the folks at home what typically happens.
And
we'll sort of then we'll unpack it from sort of a cognitive behavioral therapy standpoint. I'll use myself as an example.
Okay.
Since you didn't jump in.
Typically, I have one, but we can do you first. So typically what happens is Jenny expresses that she feels as though it's not a real invite.
Right. So I will say, like, let's not go.
Yes.
Right. And so if we back that up and if we use sort of this thought log, this thought record log. So the thought record log asks you to write down what's the situation, then what is the feeling that you have around that? What is the sort of physical feeling you have? And then what are your sort of thoughts around that? Like, what's that sort of core key thought you have about it? So for me, my automatic thought is, they don't really want us there. And if I drill that down to like, what else is what is that automatic thought coming from? Where is that automatic thought coming from? Can you guess where it might be coming from?
Well, what do you think? Hold on, let me back up and just ask, what do you think the source or the reason for the invite is if they don't want you there?
So you're trying to do some cognitive behavioral therapy. So the three of you, when this stuff happens in our life, that's what you're doing. So the cognitive behavioral therapist, or the worksheets, if you're doing it on your own, really are like a detective. Kind of what they're doing is poking holes in your story, poking holes in your automatic thoughts, poking holes in your core beliefs, and asking you to kind of prove and rationalize where those come from.
Right.
And often where they're coming from is distorted thinking, what we call cognitive distortion. So just unhelpful thought patterns. And that's what these sort of thought records help you do. You identify what your automatic thoughts are, and then you examine them. And I'll tell you what some of the cognitive distortions are. So then you examine them. So then it's hard for you to then believe those thoughts anymore, because you've kind of disproven them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
so how do we disprove those?
How do we?
things?
Okay, so the automatic thought for me is they don't really want us there. The sort of core belief is people don't really like me. I'm not likable. Okay, I'm being really raw here, but this is a real problem.
Wrong,
something I'm working on. What?
You're completely wrong about that, by the way.
Okay, well let's look at that.
I think over 2,000 podcast downloads prove you wrong.
Or maybe I'm so wrong, so unlikable that people are downloading me to make fun of me. That's
some distorted thinking. If I've ever heard any.
So, but like follow along and think about this for your own problems, your own sort of thoughts too. What is your automatic thought? So something happens, it sort of triggers a thought from you. Like you're hearing that crash at night, it triggers a thought for you. So something happens, triggers a thought. I get an invite. I think, it's a pity invite. They don't really want me there. Not all the time, but sometimes. So I would write down, okay, the situation is I get invited somewhere.
Right.
My automatic thought is they don't really want me there. It was a pity invite. And where is that coming from? It's coming from my belief that people don't like me, that I'm not likable, that I'm not good enough. Okay. So then what does that cause me to do? It causes me to feel, because remember, we're looking at our thoughts, our feelings, and then our behaviors. So I've written down my thoughts. I've identified my thoughts. I also have to identify my feelings. My feelings are, let's see, how would I label my feelings? Sad, scared, I guess also afraid that I'm going to sort of make a fool of myself. So that's probably also an automatic thought for me. But mostly fear. And I would like to avoid. So then behaviors, what does that then encourage me to do? Like what does my thought, then feeling, then behavior lead me to do? Well, it leads me to say, no thanks, we're going to stay home.
Yeah.
Most often it leads me to say to the three of you. Yeah, it leads me to say to the three of you, like, we're not going. And then the three of you to sort of poke holes in it. And then, but my tendency is to try to avoid, try to withdraw. That's my behavior. And that's my pattern, right? And then if I'm doing that, if we're talking about someone with social anxiety, they get an invite somewhere, that triggers their automatic thought of like, ooh, they don't really want me, or I'm going to go and make a fool out of myself. So it triggers this feeling of anxiety, fear, discomfort, maybe sadness. So it triggers this behavior of I'm not going, or I'm going to go and be really kind of withdrawn. And then it probably is going to impact whether or not people invite you again. So it becomes, so then it kind of reinforces this behavior if you continue to think of it in sort of a triangular way. It's a cycle. So that's the first step, is identifying those automatic thoughts, those core beliefs. Is that thunder outside?
Oh, it was a big noise. I don't know.
We may have just had an explosion live here.
Or Pixie dropped something.
So you identify those automatic beliefs, automatic thoughts, core beliefs, your feelings, your behaviors. You write that down. You kind of journal that. That's what I'm asking people to do, is kind of lean in, turn that dial up, really pay attention to that stuff. And I say to people, do that over the course of a week. Identify your problem and then track this. You know, you could track it on your phone. Actually, there's probably some apps. If you do like an app search, I bet you could find a CBT, CBT app that would sort of track this for you.
Not CBD.
Not CBD.
We will do that on different episodes.
Yes, it is coming. So you kind of do that for a week. And then what we would do in session is then we would start applying some detective work to that. We'd start really looking at that and saying, okay, are there cognitive distortions? Are there unhelpful patterns of thinking that you've got going on there? So here's some of those unhelpful thinking styles. So I'll read through some of them. And if you think if any of those apply to this situation, let me know.
To your situation?
To my situation. And for those of you kind of following along at home or in your car, think about your situation and see if these sort of unhelpful thinking patterns hold true for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did you find an app?
I did.
Though?
There's lots of them. So there's CBT Thought Diary. That's a free app.
Perfect.
There's something called, I think this.
What's so funny?
It's so your type of joke. It's a Jenny pun. It's the Woebot, like WOE, like woes.
Oh, I like
Woebot.
that.
The Woebot is your self-care expert, and I think let's see, think through situations with step-by-step guidance from the Woebot using tools from cognitive behavioral therapy. Learn about yourself with intelligent mood tracking. Master skills to reduce stress and live happier. Over 100 plus evidence-based stories.
Okay.
So the Woebot, check that out, and check out the CBT Thought Diary.
Great. Actually, at some point, what I want to do is I want to do an episode on useful apps because there are some great apps that are coming out now in terms of like mental health.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, it was thunder because I just got an alert that lightning was detected. I didn't know it was going to rain. Weird. And we just talked about how I'm like a meteorological
Now I just
dork.
have AC/DC stuck in my head.
All right. Focus. Back to focus here. All right. So we've got our automatic thoughts, core beliefs, feelings, behaviors. Now, these are some unhelpful thought patterns. Okay.
And we're going to apply them to your situation?
Yes. And also, I know you have one in your head, so you can apply it to your own and people at home. All or nothing thinking. So really kind of black or white thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I'm not perfect, I've failed. Either I do it right or not at all. I get an A+ on every test, or I'm a terrible student.
That definitely applies to my situation.
Okay, applies to your situation. Do you want to share your situation, or should we just stick with one situation as an example?
Now I have to share.
Okay, go ahead.
So it's my health/weight loss journey. That's what's really at the forefront of my mind and always a big source of stress for me.
So kind of like if I have this little Hershey's Kiss right now that's kind of not on my weight loss plan, then I'm completely stinking at this plan. So
I mean, for me, the all or nothing doesn't really apply to that type of thing.
Okay.
It applies to I have to get to where I want to be, and there's no in between, or there's no.
So I reach this goal that I set for myself on Friday, or I'm never going to reach a goal.
Yeah, well, I mean, you always hear that phrase for weight loss specialists and coaches and whatever, that it is it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
I want it to be a sprint.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
So you can see that that is a faulty thought pattern, right?
Yeah.
A big component of CBT, and this is a component I talk about a lot in my sessions, is there's lots of people that are black and white. I think as Americans, we have a very sort of black and white approach to things. Like people are good or bad. Situations are good or bad. We're good or bad. We do things right or we do things wrong. It's black or white, and we don't really know how to live in the gray. So I talk about that a lot, about living in the gray, that just because you don't meet your goal, or you aren't perfect all week on your weight loss plan, or you didn't go to the gym every single day, it doesn't mean that you're a failure or that you're never going to make it. It means that you're human and you're living in the gray. Right. So that black and white thinking, that all or nothing thinking, that is a cognitive distortion, because being black and white is not realistic. That is not the world we live in. That is not us as humans. If we were robots, then that would be different, but we're not.
Robots.
Or a wobot. Okay, so that's one unhelpful thinking style or cognitive distortion. The other one is having a mental filter and kind of looking at your environment, your situation, and only choosing to focus on certain types of evidence. So only seeing our failures and not our successes.
Okay. Or what about only seeing the successes?
It would be, only seeing the thing that reinforces your automatic thought or
And
your
like
core belief, and not
ignoring
and filtering out the other stuff.
Well, ignoring the stuff that you could have done better in that situation.
Yeah, but we're talking about getting better. So you're that's kind of a negative approach.
No, what I'm saying is you ignore the things that you could do to improve.
No.
To have a better outcome?
No. Well, tell me more about that.
What I'm saying, I'll apply it to my situation with my weight loss journey. I am down 10 pounds, by the way. I don't want everybody out there to think I'm
That's fantastic.
a failure.
Okay.
But I would like it to go quicker. But anyway, my point is, I'll look at a week and say, or like I'll look at my food diary and be like, oh, I ate lots of protein today, lots of carbs. Good carbs or whatever. Like I did balance. And I'll ignore the fact that I totally did not drink enough water.
Okay,
right?
but you're approaching this in a negative way. So remember, the point of this is to poke holes in our automatic thoughts. So what automatic thought are you having that you would be applying this to? Yes, in general, we can choose to look at information and only see certain things, but we're talking about CBT. We're talking about cognitive behavioral therapy. Right. So what is the core belief that you identified? I guess if we're going to sort of use your example, we should actually know what your core belief was. Your automatic thought, your core belief.
Well, I don't know what my automatic thought is about it, but my core belief is, to accomplish my health goals and weight loss goals, it has to include a significant amount of water intake, right?
No. What's your core belief when you think about your problem is you want to lose weight?
Yes.
Okay. So what is your sort of, when you think about that, what do you think? Your automatic thought. So you might not be ready to do this part. You might really need to take a week and pay attention to.
I think I need to do the worksheets.
You might need to do the worksheets. You might really need to turn that dial up. Like I'm able to tap into it because I talk about this all the time, but this is a completely brand new concept for you. So I'm glad that you're struggling with it, because people at home probably are too. So really, you might not be able to right now identify what your automatic thought is because you haven't tuned into it. So it would mean that the next week, every time you go to sort of like enter your information in your MyFitnessPal, your tracker, or you're going to like go for a run, or you're going to get on the scale, what are the things you're thinking of?
Okay.
You paying attention to that, turning that volume up, and then writing those down. Like, are the feelings like, this is never going to happen, I'm never going to be successful, this is a pain, this is too hard, I'm going to gain this back, I'm not going to do that. Like those are the sort of core automatic thoughts.
Okay.
And then when you have those thoughts written down, then we can kind of drill down and say, okay, what does that say about you?
Right.
What do you believe about yourself? And then we apply these principles to it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's use my example then. So all or nothing thinking, we talked about mental filter, only paying attention to certain types of evidence. Can we apply that to my sort of automatic thought? Nobody wants me there. They don't really want me there. Nobody likes me. I'm not likable.
Yes.
How?
Well, I don't know why you think those things.
Right. So I probably think those things because I can choose to look at the situation. So I would say, if I was my own client, all right, so tell me about situations that reinforce that belief that they don't want you there, or that nobody really likes you.
Where does that come from?
Well, what reinforces that for you? What's the data to support that? And I might say, well, they didn't invite me to this thing, or they didn't smile at me at the grocery store, or, I'm making stuff up now, or they didn't come to my birthday party, or something like that, right? Like, so I would be reinforcing that belief with some negative information from the environment. Was there alternative information there? So that was the negative stuff. That was all the stuff that sort of made me feel like they don't like me, they don't want me there. What about the times where maybe they did make me feel like they liked me or that I was good enough? And I would ask the client to list those times. Okay, well, maybe the times like they went away with me on vacation, or they called me when I was sick, or they came over when our dog died or something. I'm totally making this stuff up now, people. If friends are listening, I'm making this stuff up now. If that's the case, then what I had been doing is I had been applying a mental filter and only taking in the information that reinforced my core thought, my core belief.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there was lots of proof that they do like me. They are my friends. They would want me there, but I wasn't paying attention to that. I was paying attention to the negative stuff. If my core belief is no one likes me, then if I walk through Target and nobody says hi to me, except for one person, and I'm choosing to focus on all the people that didn't say hi to me, I'm applying a mental filter. If I'm talking about sort of my success as like a student and saying, I'm just not a good student, I'm not smart, and I was then sort of breaking down, okay, what's the data that supports that? Maybe I would say, well, once I got a B+.
Right.
Okay. What about all the other times?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got an A or an A+, but I got a B+.
So you're
once.
focusing.
So I'm filtering out the positive stuff and only paying attention to the stuff that reinforces that automatic thought. So part of this is poking holes in what you're believing.
Okay.
So it's really hard then to say like, yeah, this is what you guys do to me when I say they don't want us there, is you poke holes in that.
Yes.
What you're doing is in my situation, you're identifying that I'm using a mental filter. Okay.
Well, and now we're going to say that. Listen, Mom, you're using a mental filter.
All right. So all or nothing thinking, mental filter. And these might not necessarily apply to everyone's situations. There's a whole lot of these.
Right.
Another one is jumping to conclusions. So kind of mind reading or fortune telling, like imagining that we know what other people are thinking. Like, well, they only invited us because they feel bad for us. Do I really know that? No,
you don't.
I'm just reading their minds. Or fortune telling, like predicting the future. Like this is going to be the last time they invite us somewhere. They're never going to invite us somewhere again. That's fortune telling. Do I really know that information? No. So how can I then allow it to dictate how I'm feeling?
Right.
Okay. So this is all poking holes at your automatic thoughts.
And in turn, dictating your behavior.
Right. So emotional reasoning.
Starting to get it, Jenny.
You're starting to get it, starting to click. And if it's not starting to click, that's okay. You might be someone that like the workbook's not going to be enough. You need like a professional with you to help explain it. Emotional reasoning, assuming that because we feel a certain way, what we think must be true. Well, I feel lonely. I feel sad. So they must think I'm pathetic. Right. Like thinking that because I feel a certain way, it must then somehow prove how other people are thinking or explain their actions. I have no idea. Just because I'm feeling a certain way means nothing about what other people are thinking or doing. It's just how I'm feeling.
Right.
Now it does impact how I behave, but that's mine. It doesn't mean anything about anyone else.
Well, that reminds me of, just makes me think of, it's all like relative to your own.
It is. Well, so it would be like saying, I feel embarrassed, so I must be an unlikable person. Or I feel uncomfortable in social situations, so I must be unlikable.
I must not be fun to hang out with.
Yeah, because I feel this way. Nope, that's just the way I feel. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's how I am. Those are just my feelings.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, I see the next one is labeling.
Labeling. So assigning labels to ourselves or other people. Things like I'm a loser, I'm completely useless, they're such an idiot, they're jerks, they're selfish, I'm boring. Things like that.
That goes right along with emotional reasoning. Like that's the next step.
Well, and also all or nothing thinking, right? Like I'm a jerk. Maybe when I say a certain thing or do a certain thing, that's jerky behavior, but does that define me?
Right.
No. So I also think that labeling is sort of all or nothing.
Yeah.
It's black and white thinking there.
Should we take a break?
Sure.
All right. We will be right back.
What's up, everybody? My name's Tim from the Shut Up and Dad podcast, and I hope you're enjoying this show. If you're looking for some laughs after you finish listening to this episode, come check out Shut Up and Dad. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and your favorite podcast platform by searching Shut Up and Dad, or simply head to our website, shutupanddad-podcast.com, where you can listen to episodes, read our blog, and find links to our show. That's shutupanddad-podcast.com.
All right, we are back. Jenny, so we are going to go through the next 5 unhelpful thinking styles. But
Yes,
before we
so-
do that, let's go ahead and tell everybody we just decided during the break.
Oh, yes. What we decided to do is that we are going to make this a 2-parter,
Yeah.
since Josh said we're already sort of encroaching on 40 minutes here. And I think it makes sense. See, listen, cognitive behavioral therapy is a big topic. Like, you can take an entire semester-long course on CBT and
Right.
still not know it all. So to try to sort of cram it all into one episode, I guess doesn't make sense. And as I sort of started talking about it, and Josh got really interested in it, and we started applying it to sort of real scenarios, I think what makes sense is for us to finish this, the other half of the unhelpful thinking styles, and kind of leave you all with these tools and encourage you to kind of do it as homework.
Yeah.
To sort of think about your own sort of stumbling blocks, where you're stuck, things that are troubling for you, have you sort of turn up that dial on your automatic thoughts, record it. You could share it with us. We can
I'm
sort of
gonna
write
do
it on our Instagram page and sort of apply these unhelpful thinking styles. Do you find yourself doing them? And then the next episode, what we'll
Right.
do is we'll share, okay, then now what? What are some actual principles around cognitive behavioral therapy? Like, there's actually like exposure therapy a little bit, kind of leaning into things. We talk about leaning into things a lot when
Right.
we're talking about cognitive behavioral therapy, because we want you to sort of lean into those spaces that are uncomfortable for you, but just a little bit. So we can talk maybe more in detail about some of that by breaking this up into a 2-part episode.
Part 2.
And
yeah.
it did seem like it worked well to do a 2-part episode before.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a 2-part episode. So I'm going to share the other 5 sort of unhelpful thinking styles, those cognitive distortions. Remember, distorted thinking, which doesn't mean you're abnormal. It just means that it's distorted thinking.
Yeah.
And then,
Well, some of us may be abnormal.
right. And then take a little break over the weekend and then come back and sort of share the kind of
Yes.
now what.
This
Okay.
will be a Thursday and a Monday.
A Thursday and a Monday.
release.
Okay.
So
All right.
I
So
can-
just to review, the 5 unhelpful thinking styles so far are all or nothing thinking, kind of that black or white thinking, applying a mental filter, so only pulling in information that sort of substantiates your automatic thoughts, your
Yep.
core beliefs, jumping to conclusions, things like mind reading, fortune telling, emotional reasoning, what I feel must dictate what I am. I feel like I am embarrassed, so I must be a loser. And then labeling yourselves, labeling others. And you can already see, Josh, you've pointed this out, that these aren't like very defined silos. They kind of bleed into each
Yeah,
other.
they're connected.
They're connected.
Yeah.
All right. So the next one is overgeneralizing. Any thoughts about what that could be? Or how to apply it in my situation. So basically, it's when you see something, you basically draw conclusions based on very little evidence, based on sort of one thing. Like, my friend didn't call me today, so she doesn't like me anymore. We're not friends anymore. She's never going to call me again. She hates me. I must have done something wrong
Right.
because she didn't call me today, or she didn't text me today. That's overgeneralizing, right?
Well,
We are
it's
assuming
taking-
something based on one incident.
Right. It's taking one event, and you're going to apply an generalizing about it, and you're going to apply that to any of the future invites. And so if we're talking about your situation, like, well, this one time I didn't get a phone call, or this happened, so this is going to be it for all the future invites.
Right.
Right.
Right. And so that must mean that they feel a certain way about me, when it could be maybe they didn't call me because they were vomiting that day, or because they
Gross.
weren't feeling well, or because they were busy, or because it just I didn't cross their mind, because
Right.
I'm not the center of their universe, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So overgeneralizing.
The
So
next
watch
one,
for that.
The next one you do all the time.
So disqualifying the positive is really very similar to a mental filter.
Okay.
Okay. Do you see the connection between
Yes,
that?
yes.
All right. So disqualifying the positive, and we can put these up on the show notes. There's actually, I like this picture. It's a person like throwing positive, like ions in a trash can. Discounting the good things that have happened, or that you have done for some reason or another, like that doesn't count. So like if you said, Jenny, they invite you over every single weekend, I would be like, well, that's different. That doesn't count. That's because they have to.
Well,
it doesn't mean they really want to.
And I'll remind you too of like something somebody said about you that was positive, or a compliment, and you fluff it off, or you like dismiss it completely.
Right. Yeah, that's
Everett
me
is-
dismissing the positive.
Everett's really loud right now.
Everett is trying to dismiss his itchiness.
Yeah, he's itching. But yeah, you just thanks, Everett.
Yeah, wait, this is just how our summer recordings are going to be.
Yeah, but you dismiss the compliment or the positive affirmation as it doesn't count at all.
Right. So because if I accept that positive, then it makes it so that my automatic thought, I can't possibly believe my automatic thought of they don't like me, they don't want me there, I'm not likable, right? Because it doesn't fit that narrative. It doesn't fit that automatic thought if I say that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yes, I admit I do that. There's
do,
probably a
yeah,
lot of you
that
out there
one.
that also discount or disqualify the positive. All right. Another one is magnification or catastrophizing. I feel like catastrophizing. Have you heard of this before? Because I feel like
No.
this is pretty pop culture-y in a way. People
No.
talk about this like, oh, I'm catastrophizing. It's kind of like
Is that
when people
blowing things out of proportion?
exactly.
Okay.
It's people, I think, say things like, I have OCD a
You
lot.
do this too, by
I
the
think
way.
people also now are starting to recognize catastrophizing. Absolutely.
Oh, we talked about that. What episode was that?
I don't know. They all blend.
I have OCD.
Yes. Okay.
Anxiety. I think that was the episode.
Yes, blowing things out of proportion.
But you do that too.
Okay. Can you give me an example? I don't dispute that.
Yeah. You exaggerate things to accentuate the negative. I guess it's a little bit like, and especially in this situation.
In like my social anxiety
Yeah,
stuff.
it's a little bit like glasses half empty kind of thinking.
Yeah.
Like you'll look at like say an invite to a gathering will come and it's later in the day, right? And maybe it's, I don't know, 6:15 at night, and you'll say something like, it's almost 8 o'clock.
Oh my God, I do that. The boys bug me about that all the time. Jacob will always be like, Mom, it's 6:30. What time is it in your brain? Because he knows I will say 7. It's pretty much 7.
Future stand-up comedian, Jacob.
That's true. Yes. I do catastrophize. I magnify
It
things.
says
I blow things out of
Or
proportion.
inappropriately shrinking something to make it seem less important.
I don't know that applies. Well, maybe the positive.
Minimalization.
Minimizing the positive stuff.
Minimization. That's what it
Yeah.
says.
Like, okay, so yeah, 50 people came to my birthday party, but I don't really.
But I'm still hated.
Nobody likes me. Or like, oh, these 2 people at our dinner party got into a fight and everybody in the restaurant saw. So now I can never go to that restaurant again because everybody's talking about it.
Yep.
I just said that last night when you were like, that was our waitress that night. Because this really happened. And I was like, I feel like I need to go apologize to her because I catastrophized. Look, what happened still wasn't okay. But
Right.
But yeah.
It wasn't a catastrophe.
It wasn't a catastrophe.
Right.
Still not appropriate.
No.
Don't come over to my table and fight during a dinner party.
Is the next one shoulding?
Yes, exactly. So we've talked about shoulding all over myself, which I actually think the professor that talked about that with me was a student of Beck. I think she had Erin Beck
interesting.
as a professor. So I think that's where she got it from, like directly. So using critical words like should, must, or ought, which can make us feel guilty or like we've already failed. Like I should have done that. I should do this. I should make sure I drink water every day.
Yeah.
I should make sure that I am a perfect friend. I should make sure that I'm the perfect mom. All that kind of should stuff that you're placing this kind of stress on yourself. So I don't know that that necessarily applies to my issue right now. Maybe like everyone should like me.
Yeah.
That's probably where it would fit in. Like I should please everybody. I should be well thought of by everybody.
Yeah.
So maybe that's where that comes in, and sort of that automatic thought of like, I'm not likable. I guess I should be likable by everybody. That's not really true, right? Like it's okay for not everybody to like me.
But you feel like everybody should like you.
Right. All right, then personalization. This is my fault. So blaming yourself or taking responsibility for something that wasn't completely your fault. Let's use that dinner party example too, because
totally not your fault.
But I felt like it was because I sort of coordinated the night. Listen, it was like 15, 16 of us out for dinner at a restaurant. And then suddenly a big fight ensued, disagreement, but loud, broke out between someone who was not part of our party and someone who was part of our party. And people were looking. People did leave the party abruptly. Mm-hmm. It was a thing. And I personalized because I felt like this was my fault. I planned this. And so somehow I should have been aware that this was going to happen. I should have been able to shut it down.
Right.
I personalized and sort of made that my fault. So how does that fit with my sort of social anxiety stuff? I guess it fits in that, like, if things go wrong at a social gathering, it's my fault.
Yeah.
So why would I want to go to a social gathering if I have all this pressure on my shoulders?
And your what was the one? Hold on, I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna find it. Overgeneralizing. Maybe when people, you might think to yourself, well, everybody thinks that I let this happen, so they're not going to want to be with me anymore, or they're not going to come to anything that I coordinate or invite people to. Right.
Yeah, so those are the sort of 10 big kind of buckets of cognitive distortion.
Unhelpful thinking styles.
Unhelpful sort of thought patterns. So sort of think about your own situation, the sort of problem that you've identified, the sort of thought record that you're keeping, and see, are there any of these sort of happening? Are you sort of, a couple of the other ones, are you... well, I guess that's catastrophizing. Are you just assuming all the time that the worst will happen? Because I think I'm doing that when I'm talking about social stuff.
Yes.
If there's going to be a fight, I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm going to say something or do something that makes people not want to be my friend anymore. Okay, so I've used my example. So I've been very kind of raw and authentic and exposed one of my struggles.
Very vulnerable.
It was very vulnerable.
Yes.
I think the people that are close to me, though, really know that.
Yeah.
Like they know
do.
this is not going to be new information to people that really know me. But this is something I struggle with. And clearly, like, I know these CBT principles, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't sit down with a thought record and go through these. But I have the three of you, my husband and my two children, who sort of do that with me. Yep. You guys are sort of like my CBT clinicians, my cognitive behavioral therapists, without even knowing. And now I've given you tools. And so I wonder if this is going to change things.
I'm going to label it.
You're going to label it now. So that's what I want you guys all to do that are listening, is really think about a thing that you're stuck on, something you want to change, something that's uncomfortable for you. Maybe it's driving on the highway. Maybe it's going on vacation. Maybe it's being with a certain family member. Maybe it's something applying for a new job, something at work. Maybe it's starting a new weight loss program. It really could be anything, something that you're kind of stuck with, and really kind of turn up the dial this week or this weekend on your automatic thoughts. Yes, it's going to feel crazy because I'm saying get in your head and listen to your voice, and then write it down and listen to it. You don't even have to think about it, but just write down your thoughts, like write down the situation. So kind of think about those moments that make you kind of feel uncomfortable, like, I feel scared, or I feel uncomfortable, or I feel mad. Those are the moments I want you to turn up the volume, and then write down what your thoughts were.
Right.
And then you can write down, either in the moment or later, you can go back once you've written down your thought and kind of unpack that. Okay, what was I then feeling? What did I do as a result of that? Where did that thought come from, that automatic thought come from? Did it come from the thought that, like, I'm hopeless, I can't do anything, I'm a loser, I'm worthless, nobody loves me? Where's that core? What is the core belief? at some point it might be useful to also kind of unpack that core belief. That's where I always then fold in like psychodynamic theory, that sort of Freudian thing. I always like to then talk with people about where did that voice in your head come from? That automatic, because usually the voice in your head is a voice that we've learned during childhood. Sometimes it's not our own voice. Sometimes it's a parent's voice or another adult or a kid, something that happened in our childhood that sort of became pretty profound. So that's kind of how I pair psychodynamic approaches with CBT, but we're just focusing on CBT right now.
And CBT stands for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy.
Right. So it's that loop between your cognitions or your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors.
What you think and do affects the way you feel.
Yes.
Yes.
And
that's the key concept.
Yes. I always say that what you think then triggers your feelings, and your feelings then trigger your behaviors, which then goes back and triggers your feelings, goes and triggers your thoughts. It's all interconnected there. It's sort of an endless loop. What CBT tries to do is to break that loop so that it changes the pattern. It kind of gets you unstuck. So I guess that's your homework assignment, is to identify a problem or problems and record your automatic thoughts. Then go back through, write down your feelings, write down your behaviors around them, and see if you can identify any of these cognitive distortions. Like if you unpack it a little bit, can you see that you were doing all or nothing thinking? So just once again, to sort of run through that list of 10, which we will have on the show notes: all or nothing thinking, applying a mental filter, jumping to conclusions, emotional reasoning, labeling, overgeneralizing, disqualifying the positive, magnification or catastrophizing, or minimizing, shoulding all over yourself, and personalization. So this is all my fault. Any of those 10 or multiples of those 10, do you see any of those present? And then kind of write them down or hold them in your head, or, put them somewhere that it's useful, so that when you listen to part 2, when we talk about, okay, now what? Now that you've identified your thoughts, your automatic thoughts, you've identified some core beliefs, you've identified which of these sort of faulty thought patterns you have. Okay, great. That's useful information. But now what?
Now what do you do?
So we can talk sort of about the now what on our next episode.
Which will be episode 30. And we'll be back with you guys on Monday.
That'll be Monday, July 1st.
So you've got the weekend to do Jenny's homework.
Yeah, do your homework.
Yeah.
And also, if you're really intrigued by this, you don't have to wait until Monday. You can go on Amazon. You could go on Amazon this morning, buy the book, and have it in hand before Monday even rolls around.
There you go.
That workbook, so you can have more tools. There's lots and lots of worksheets. So this is not the only one. It's just, I think, a good place to start.
Okay. Awesome. Well, that was a good part 1. We will see everybody back here on Monday for part 2, episode 30. Do you have anything else to add about part 1?
No, I just want to thank you for also being vulnerable, because I know you knew nothing about what we were talking about, nothing about what I might ask you.
I felt a lot like Jon Snow.
You, and at least like my students, when they come to class and they know we're going to be talking about CBT, or they know we're in like a therapy class, they know I'm going to put them on the spot. Like they're kind of in that mindset. But you looked like a deer in headlights.
20 minutes before we recorded this episode, I said, "Are we doing a relationship one?" And you said, "No, we're going to do CBT." I said, "Okay." All right, everybody. Well, that is going to do it for today. Thank you so much for listening. You can learn more on this topic by checking out Feeling Good, the book written by David Burns. Also, check out those apps that we mentioned, CBT Thought Diary, and of course, my favorite, the Woebot, WOEBOT, for some helpful tips and resources as to how to gather up your cognitive behavioral thinking and write down your thoughts. And Jenny is going to throw the 10 unhelpful thinking styles into the show notes as well. And as a reminder, this episode was for education and entertainment purposes only. Should you need additional support, please contact your healthcare provider for information and referrals. Please follow us on Facebook, everybody, at Changing Perspectives Podcast, and on Instagram at Changing Perspectives Blogs. You can check out our website, by going to changingperspectivesblog.com, or send us an email to changingpodcast@gmail.com. Go ahead and subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode, and we will see you next time. Say bye, Jenny.
Bye, Jenny.
The Changing Perspectives podcast is produced, recorded, and edited by Dizzy Bird Studios, Whitman, Massachusetts, Visit Dizzy Bird Studios on Facebook, facebook.com/DizzyBirdStudios.